Alarm went off. Stop the filming, so it has to be at least two parts of film. And I'm not sure where I was. Just give me a moment. With a grimace, he looked around the room in the dull gray of the growing dawn that snuck in around the window shades. This wasn't his bedroom. Nothing looked or felt familiar. Where was he? Think, Mac, think. Then he remembered he was still at the shack with those three interesting characters, all of whom thought they were God. This can't really be happening, Mac grunted as he pulled his feet out of bed and sat on its edge with his head in his hands. He thought back to the previous day and again entertained the fear that he was going crazy. As he had never been much of a touchy-feely person, Papa, whoever she was, made him nervous, and he had no idea what to make of Sarayu. He admitted to himself that he liked Jesus a lot, but he seemed the least godlike of the three. He let out a deep, heavy sigh, and if God was really here, why hadn't he taken his nightmares away? Sitting in a quandary he decided wasn't helping, so he found his way to the bathroom where, to his amusement, everything he needed for a shower had been carefully laid out for him. He took his time in the warmth of the water, took his time shaving, and back in the bedroom took his time dressing. The penetration and alluring aroma of coffee drew his eye to the steaming cup waiting for him on the end table by the door. Taking a sip, he opened the shades and stood looking out through his bedroom window onto the lake, which he'd only glimpsed as a shadow the night before. It was perfect, smooth as glass, except for the occasional trout leaping after its breakfast, sending circles of miniature waves radiating across the deep blue surface until they were slowly absorbed back into the larger surface. He estimated the far side was about half a mile away. Dew sparkled everywhere, diamond-like tears of the early morning reflecting the sun's love. S-U-N''S. The three canoes, resting easily at intervals along the dock, looked inviting, but Mac shrugged off the thought. Canoes were no longer a joy. Too many bad memories. The dock reminded him of the night before. Had he really lain out there with the one who made the universe? Mac shook his head, dumbfounded. What was going on here? Who were they really, and what did they want from him? Whatever it was, he sure didn't have it to give. The smell of eggs and bacon mixed with something else curled into his room, interrupting his thoughts. Mac decided it was time to emerge and speak for his share. As he entered the main living area, he heard the sound of a familiar brusque Bruce Cockburn tune drifting in from the kitchen, and a high-pitched black woman singing along rather well. Oh, love that fires the sun, keep me burning. Papa emerged with plates in each hand full of pancakes and fried potatoes and greens of some sort. She was dressed in a long flowing African looking garment, complete with a vibrant multicolored headband. She looked radiant, almost glowing. You know, she exclaimed, I love that child's songs. I'm especially fond of Bruce, you know. She looked over at Mac, who was just sitting down at the table. Mac nodded, his appetite increasing by the second. Yup, she continued, and I know you like him too. Mac smiled. It was true. Cockburn had been a family favorite for years. First his, then his and Nan's, and then each of the children to one degree or another. So, honey, Papa asked, continuing busily with whatever she was doing, how were your dreams last night? Dreams are sometimes important, you know. They can be a way of opening up the window and letting the bad air out. Mac knew this was an invitation to unlock the door into his terrors, but at the moment he wasn't ready to invite her into that hole with him. I slept fine, thank you, he responded, and then quickly changed the subject. Is he your favorite? Bruce, I mean? She stopped and looked at him. Mackenzie, I have no favorites. I am especially fond of him. You seem to be especially fond of a lot of people, Mac observed with a suspicious look. Are there any who you are not especially fond of? She lifted her head and rolled her eyes as if she were mentally going through the catalog of every being ever created. Nope, I haven't been able to find any. Guess that's just the way it is. Mac was interested. Do you ever get mad at any of them? Sure enough, what parent doesn't? There's a lot to be mad about in the mess my kids have made and in the mess they're in. I don't like a lot of choices they make, but that anger, especially for me, is an expression of love all the same. I love the ones I'm angry with just as much as those I'm not. But Mac paused. What about your wrath? It seems to me that if you're going to pretend to be God Almighty, you need to be a lot angrier. Do I now? This is what I'd think. Weren't you always running around killing people in the Bible? You just don't seem to fit the bill. I understand how disorienting this must be for you, Mac, but the only one pretending here is you. But the only one pretending here is you. I am what I am. I'm not trying to fit anyone's bill. But you're asking me to believe that you're God, and I just don't see. Mac had no idea how to finish his sentence, so he gave up. I'm not asking you to believe anything, but I will tell you that you're going to find this day a lot easier if you simply accept what it is instead of trying to fit it into your preconceived notions. But if you are God, aren't you the one spilling out great bowls of wrath and throwing people into a burning lake of fire? Matt could feel his deep anger emerging again, pushing out the questions in front of it. And he was a little chagrined at his own lack of self-control. But then he asked, But he asked anyway, honestly, don't you enjoy punishing those who disappoint you? At that, Papa stopped her preparations and turned toward Mac. He could see deep sadness in her eyes. I'm not who you think I am, Mackenzie. I don't need to punish people for sin. Sin is its own punishment, devouring you from the inside. It's not my purpose to punish it. It's my joy to cure it. I don't understand. You're right, you don't, she said with a smile still sad around its edges. But then again, we're not done yet. Just then, Jesus and Sarayu entered laughing through the back door, involved in their own conversation. Jesus came in dressed much like the day before, just jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that made his dark brown eyes stand out. Sarayu, on the other hand, was clothed in something so fine and lacy that it fairly flowed at the slightest breeze or spoken word. That's a good drink. It's my joy to cure it. I don't understand. We're not done yet. Dark brown clothes and something so fine, slice breeze or spoken word. Rainbow patterns shimmered and reshaped with her every gesture. Mac wondered if she ever completely stopped moving. He rather doubted it. Papa leaned down to eye level with Mac. You raised some important questions, and we'll get around to them. I promise. But now let's enjoy breakfast together. Mac nodded, again a little embarrassed as he turned his attention to the food. He was hungry anyway, and there was plenty to eat. Thank you for breakfast, he told Papa, while Jesus and Sarayu were taking their seats. What? She said in mock horror. You aren't even going to bow your head and close your eyes? She began walking toward the kitchen, grumbling as she went. Tisk, tisk, tisk. What is the world coming to? You're welcome, honey, as she waved over her shoulder. She returned a moment later with still another bowl of steaming something that smelled wonderful and inviting. They passed the food to one another, and Mac was spellbound, watching and listening as Papa joined in the conversation Jesus and Sarayu were having. It had something to do with reconciling an estranged family. But it wasn't what they were talking about that captured Mac. It was how they related. He never had seen three people share with such simplicity and beauty. Each seemed more aware of the others than of themselves. So, what do you think, Mac? Jesus asked, gesturing toward him. I have no idea what you're talking about, said Mac, with his mouth half full of the very tasty greens. But I love the way that you do it. Whoa, said Papa, who had returned from the kitchen with yet another dish. Take it easy on those greens, young man. Those things can give you the Chrts if you ain't careful. All right, said Mac. I'll try to remember as he reached for the dish in her hand. Then, turning back to Jesus, he added, I love the way you treat each other. It's certainly not how I expected God to be. How do you mean? Well, I know that you are one and all, and that there are three of you, but you respond with such graciousness to each other. Isn't one of you more the boss than the other two? The three looked at one another as if they had never thought of such a question. I mean, Mac hurried on, I have always thought of God the Father as sort of being the boss and Jesus as the one following orders, being obedient. I'm not sure how the Holy Spirit fits in exactly. Mac tried not to look at Sarayu as he stumbled for words. Whatever. The Spirit always seemed kind of a free spirit, offered Papa. Exactly, a free spirit, but still under the direction of the Father. Does that make sense? Jesus looked over at Papa, obviously trying with some difficulty to maintain the perception of a very serious exterior. Does that make sense to you, Abba? Frankly, I haven't gotten a clue what this man is talking about. Papa scrunched her face up as if exerting great concentration. Nope, I've been trying to make head nor tail out of it, but sorry, he's got me lost. You know what I'm talking about. Mac was a little frustrated. I'm talking about who's in charge. Don't you have a chain of command? Chain of command? That sounds ghastly, Jesus said. At least binding, Papa added, as they both started laughing, and Papa turned to Mac and sang, though chains be of gold, they are chains all the same. Now, don't concern yourself with those two, Sarayu interrupted, reaching out her hand to comfort and calm him. They're just playing with you. This is actually a subject of interest among us. Mac nodded, relieved and a little chagrined that he had again allowed himself to lose his composure. Mackenzie, we have no concept of final authority among us, only unity. We are in a circle of relationship, not a chain of command or great chain of being, as your ancestors termed it. What you're seeing here is a relationship without any overlay of power. We don't need power over the other because we're always looking out for the best. Hierarchy would make no sense among us. Actually, this is your problem, not ours. Really? How so? Humans are so lost and damaged that to you, it is almost incomprehensible that people could work or live together without someone being in charge. But every human institution that I can think of, from political to business, even down to marriage, is governed by this kind of thinking. It is the web of our social fabric, Mac asserted. Such a waste, said Papa, picking up the empty dish and heading for the kitchen. The one reason why experiencing true relationship is so difficult for you, Jesus added. Once you have a hierarchy, you need rules to protect and administer it, and then you need law and the enforcement of the rules, and you end up with some kind of chain of command or a system or order that destroys relationships rather than promotes it. You rarely see or experience relationship apart from power. Hierarchy imposes laws and rules, and you end up missing the wonder of relationship that we intended for you. Well, said Mac, sarcastically, sitting back in his chair. We sure seem to have adapted pretty well to it. Sarayu was quick to reply, don't confuse adaptation for intention or seduction for reality. So then, could you please pass me a bit more of those greens? So then we've been seduced into this preoccupation with authority. In a sense, yes, responded Papa, passing Mac the platter of greens, but not letting go until he'd pulled twice. I'm just looking out for you, son. Sarayu continued, when you choose independence over relationship, you became a dagger, a danger to each other. Others became objects to be manipulated or managed for your own happiness. Authority, as you usually think of it, is merely the excuse the strong use to make others conform to what they want. Isn't it helpful in keeping people from fighting endlessly or getting hurt? Sometimes, but in a selfish world, it is also used to inflict great harm. But don't you use it to restrain evil? We carefully respect your choices, so we work within your systems, even while we seek to free you from them. Papa continued, creation has been taken down a very different path than we desired. In your world, the value of the individual is constantly weighed against the survival of the system, whether political, economic, social, or religious. Any system actually, first one person and then a few, and finally even many, are easily sacrificed for the good and ongoing existence of that system. In one form or another, this lies behind every struggle for power, every prejudice, every war, and every abusive relationship. The will to power and independence has become so ubiquitous that is now considered normal. Okay, Google, define ubiquitous. Okay, Google, maximum volume. Okay, Google, define ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous is used as an adjective to mean present, appearing, or found everywhere, as in, his ubiquitous influence was felt by all the family. Do you want to hear how ubiquitous is spelled?
No. The will to power and independence has become so ubiquitous that it is now considered normal. It's not, questioned whomever. It is the human paradigm, added Papa. Having returned with more food, it's like water to fish, so prevalent that it goes unseen and unquestioned. It is the Matrix, a diabolical scheme in which you are hopelessly trapped, even while completely unaware of its existence. Jesus picked up the conversation. As the crowning glory of creation, you were made in our image, unencumbered by structure, and free to simply be in relationship with me and one another. If you had truly learned to regard each other's concerns as significant as your own, there would be no need for hierarchy. Max sat back in his chair, staggered by the implications of what he was hearing. So are you telling me that whenever we humans protect ourselves with power, you are yielding to the Matrix, not to us, finished Jesus. And now, Sarayu interjected, we have come full circle. Back to one of my initial statements. You humans are so lost and damaged that to you it is almost incomprehensible that relationship could exist apart from hierarchy. So you think that God must relate inside hierarchy like you do, but we do not. But how could we ever change that? People will just use us. They most likely will. But we're asking you to do it with others, Mac. We're asking you to do it with us. They most likely will, but we're not asking you to do it with others, Mac. We're asking you to do it with us. That's the only place it can begin. We won't use you. Mac, said Papa with an intensity that caused him to listen very carefully. We want to share with you the love and joy and freedom and light that we already know within ourselves. We created you, the human, to be in face-to-face relationship with us, and to be in face-to-face relationship with us, to join our circle of love. As difficult as it will be for you to understand, everything that has taken place is occurring exactly to this purpose, without violating choice or will. How can you say that with all the pain in this world, all the wars and disasters that destroy thousands? Mac's voice quieted to a whisper. And what is the value in a little girl being murdered by some twisted deviant? There it was again, the question that lay burning a hole in his soul. You may not cause those things, but you certainly don't stop them. Mackenzie, Papa answered tenderly, seemingly not offended in the least by his accusations. There are millions of reasons to allow pain and hurt and suffering rather than to eradicate them. But most of those reasons can only be understood with each person's story. I'm not evil. You are the ones who embrace fear and pain and power and rights so readily in your relationships. But your choices are also not stronger than my purpose, and I will use every choice you make for the ultimate good and the most loving outcome. You see, interjected Sarayu, broken humans center their lives around things that seem good to them, but that will neither fill them nor free them. They are addicted to power or the illusion of security that power offers. When a disaster happens, those same people will turn against the false powers they are trusted. In their disappointment, they either become softened toward me or they become bolder. In their independence, if you could only see how all of this ends and what we will achieve without the violation of one human will, then you would understand. One day you will. But the cost, Mac was staggered. Look at the cost. All the pain, all the suffering, everything that is so terrible and evil. He paused and looked down at the table and look what it has cost you. Is it worth it? Yes, came the unanimous, joyful response of all three. But how can you say that? Mac blurted. It all sounds like the end justifies the means, and that you, to get what you want, you will go to any length, even if it costs the lives of billions of people. Mackenzie, it was the voice of Papa again. Especially gentle and tender. You don't you really don't understand yet. You try to make sense of the world in which you live based on a very small and incomplete picture of reality. It is like looking at a parade through the tiny knothole of hurt, pain, self centeredness, and power, and believing you are on your own and insignificant. All of these contain powerful lies. You see pain and death as ultimate evils and God as the ultimate betrayer, or perhaps, at best, as fundamentally untrustworthy. You dictate the terms and judge my actions and find me guilty. The real underlying flaw in your life, Mackenzie, is that you don't think that I am good. If you knew that I was good and that everything, the means, the ends, and all the processes of individual lives is covered by my goodness, then while you might not always understand what I am doing, you would trust me, but you don't. I don't? Asked Mac. But it wasn't really a question, it was a statement of fact. And he knew it. And the others seemed to know it too, and the table remained silent. Sarayu spoke. Mackenzie, you cannot produce trust, just like you cannot do humility. It either is or it is not. Trust is the fruit of a relationship in which you know you're loved. Because you do not know that I love you, you cannot trust me. Again, there was a silence, and finally, Mac looked up at Papa and spoke. I don't know how to change that. You cannot alone. You can't. Not alone. But together we will watch that change take place. For now, I just want you to be with me and discover that our relationship is not about performance or you having to please me. I'm not a bully, not some self-centered demanding little deity insisting on my own way. I am good, and I desire only what is best for you. You cannot find that through guilt or condemnation or coercion. You cannot find that through guilt or condemnation or coercion, only through a relationship of love. And I do love you. And I love water. Excuse me. Sarayu stood up from the table and looked directly at Mac. Mackenzie, she offered, if you care to, I would like you to come and help me in the garden. There are things I need to do there before tomorrow's celebration. We can continue relevant elements of this conversation there, please. Sure, responded Mac, and excused himself from the table. One last comment, he added, turning back. I just can't imagine any final outcome that would justify all this. Mackenzie, Papa rose out of her chair and walked around the table to give him a big squeeze. We're not justifying it. We are redeeming it. And that's the chapter 8. Chapter 9 mañana.